Do you really know what thoracic outlet syndrome is? And are you tired of bouncing from expert to expert trying to figure out what's really going on? Listen, I get it, and I'll be frustrated too, which is why I'm not only going to explain to you what TOS really is, I'm also going to explain the 3 biggest reasons why you get it in the first place. To start off, let's take a look at the original definition for thoracic outlet syndrome. Now, according to the Mayo Clinic, TOS is defined as a group of conditions in which there's pressure on blood vessels or nerves in the areas between the neck and the shoulder. This space is known as the thoracic outlet. Compression of the blood vessels and nerves can cause shoulder pain, neck pain, and numbness in the fingers. And you see the problem with this definition? It's that small phrase right there, a group of conditions. This pretty much means that anything that can create some kind of compression within the neck, shoulder, and chest region can technically be classified as TOS, which still doesn't help you in your situation because it can literally be anything in there and any specific reason. So with that said, let's actually go over the 3 biggest reasons for TOS and what's really going on. One of the first reasons for TOS and that compression in the neck and the chest is going to be thanks to bad posture. Bad posture like rounded shoulders or forward head posture will naturally shorten the muscles in the front of the body like the neck, the shoulders, and the chest. This means if you're constantly using these muscles, even if you're not lifting weights, you can very easily use them being on a computer and typing all day because these muscles still have to contract in order to get your arms up in front of you to do your job. And if that is you and you're constantly staying in that position for years on end, then your body is naturally going to begin to form that shape, giving you your rounded shoulders and your forward head posture. Now, when this happens, those muscles in the front of the body will remain in that shortened position, which can actually create pain on its own and compression by just squeezing on the blood vessels and the nerves by shortening too much. Or B, when you actually do try to extend and open up the chest, those muscles right there are so short and tight that they can't fully extend, which means they're again going to create some kind of compression on the nerves and blood vessels under them. This is also why your pain is most likely set off after you're doing something as well. Think about it. If you ever done MRI tests or the nerve conductor test and all that, most likely you're doing it laying down with your arms to your side in a position where you're not necessarily feeling pain. But after you raise your arms for a little bit, type on the computer, do the dishes, whatever, those muscles in the front of the body once again shortened and got tight, and then you began to feel your pain. So one of the biggest reasons, just to kind of reiterate this, is because your bad posture will produce shortened and lengthened muscles in it at the same time, and it's those shortened muscles that are most likely compressing on your nerves and blood vessels. And where can they be found? In the neck, in the chest, and in the shoulders. Now, if all that makes sense, then make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any new content. But now that you understand the idea of having shortened and lengthened muscles, this now brings me to the second point for why you may have compression in the neck and the chest, and that is just thanks to overuse. Now, when I think of a muscle being overused, I do like to kind of put it into the same realm as having bad posture, because when you have bad posture, you're just constantly reusing these muscles over and over. But the distinct difference between the two is going to be when you have bad posture, it's usually in an isometric contraction, kind of staying in one position for long periods of time, versus having repetitive movements, kind of wear and tear, all that kind of stuff is thanks to constantly shortening and lengthening it. So a good example of this is just going to be someone who did all chest all day, every day in the gym, but never strengthened their backs. Again, this is going to lead to those muscles getting shortened and tight, and this is then going to lead to the muscles in the back becoming lengthened and weakened. But that's not the only kind of job that does this, right? You can also think of a lot of manual labor jobs, like maybe just a plumber, for example. When they're laying on their backs, working underneath, they constantly have to bring their arm up, do a few wrenches, bring back down, up and down, constantly for the whole job. Electricians or roofers and random things like that. All those movements on a day-to-day basis where you have to use your arms to lift things up and put them back down, that right there can be classified, in my definition at least, as overuse for the muscles, which can then create your TOS. Now, the third reason for your TOS or having some sort of compression in the neck and the chest and all that is going to be thanks to an injury. And I think this was pretty easy to understand. When you get injured, when you have a cut on the arm or something, then your body will develop a scar over it. And what happens there is the tissues around that scar will become a little tighter because everything's kind of getting pulled towards that spot right there. And because of that, this may create some sort of compression, some sort of tightness in those different areas, especially if the nerves and blood vessels somehow get caught up within the adhesion within the scar tissue. I know I only promised you 3, but let me give you a few more small ones real quick. A very common one I see is going to be the first rib, where your doctor is going to say your first rib is what's creating that compression. Well, I want you to take a look at the anatomy for your first rib and just tell me which muscles are attached there. Because if you take a look, you will see that there are certain muscles that attach to it and that also get chronically shorn and tight thanks to things like bad posture and overuse. Those 2 muscles are your scalenes and your subclavius, which is a tiny muscle underneath your collarbone. Both of these muscles attach to your first rib and even your clavicle. And if either of them or both of them get tight, thanks to overuse, which is very common, then they may end up creating some sort of shortness and pulling on that first rib and clavicle, which then compresses on your nerves and blood vessels. Now, let me be clear here. Having compression from the first rib is not the same as having compression from an extra rib. An extra rib you can very easily see on an x-ray because it's abnormal. You weren't supposed to be born with that. And those are usually very rare. For a lot of people, it's usually going to be the first rib that a lot of us are born with, most of us are born with here. And it's usually going to be the muscles and the fascia system around it that's creating that tightness, as opposed to just the bones randomly collapsing in on each other one day. So as you can see, technically the TOS definition isn't wrong, but hopefully now you have a better understanding of what can create that compression and why. And now you can actually take a look at your own lifestyle and ask yourself, where do I fall into one of these categories? So you can start at least trying to figure out how to address this. But if you're still not sure, or if you think you fall into multiple categories, then make sure to check out my free TOS training at tostreatment.com/training. Because inside, I'm going to be showing you how to find the main source for your TOS, how to get rid of it in only 5 minutes, and a simple blueprint on how to keep your pain from returning. Start watching my free TOS training videos by heading over to tostreatment.com/training or click on the link in the description below. Now, you might have heard some terms get thrown around like NTOS or NTOS, or even have some of these special conditions yourself and you're curious about it. Well, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but the type of TOS you have doesn't really matter, and I'll explain why in the video popping up in the corner. I'll see you over there.